Alright guys, welcome back. We are watching Owarimonogatari episode 4, Sodachi Riddle part 2. Last time, we arrived at this old, broken down, destroyed, abandoned building with Ogi, and we gotta go back in time yet again, back 5 years, right? When Aragi was in middle school, and learn more about what it is that makes him who he is today. And how fundamental to that Oikura is, I suppose, huh? I don't know. I guess we just gotta get into it. I want to see what's gonna happen. So we're watching Sodachi Riddle Part 2. You can lend your own copy up with this if you want to. We are starting in 3, 2, 1. 5 years ago, indeed. Ooh, a metronome. Yeah, how different were you back then, huh? Okay, okay. James Bond reference. That makes sense. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love the music during these last couple arcs so much. Oh, moving on to high school, I bet. Well, no, he's not. Is he moving on to high school yet? I don't know what year he was in middle school. I see. Oh, okay. Oh God, right, yeah. I see. Not being right. Even back then, huh? It was that big of a thing for him? I guess it makes sense. I mean, it's like the same struggle he's going through now about like being at the end of high school, right? I mean, it's much bigger, I think, but yeah, going from middle school to high school would be just as big of a not quite, I'm sure, for him back then, but it would still be a big deal to him, in the same vein. Let me read the lyrics this time. I don't know what all these numbers and stuff are about. They're about a math thing, I guess. Hmm. A sunless summer. Oh, I love this song so much. Oh man. The answer was you. Uh, Interesting. No, this opening is so good. Oh man, this opening is so good. Oh, okay, okay. Okay, I see. I see. Same address on the, yeah, or the coordinates or whatever, right? Quite the house, huh? What a, yeah. I don't think he solved it. Yeah. Interesting. And it's about being correct. It's about being right. It's a big deal. Interesting. Hmm. Ah, those opening lyrics really make me wonder what her intentions are, what she wants. Okay. Ah, I see. Okay. Interesting. I see. Oh, so there's a way. There's a way that mathematics got him a girlfriend, right? From what Oikura said. Oh, yeah. Hmm. I see. Yeah, I bet there's a bunch. The Monty Hall's just a famous one. Interesting. And yet, he does fall out of love with it, doesn't he? After what happened in Oki Formula. Or, I guess, what we saw happen in Oki Formula. Desolate house. Hmm. So if back then, if the house was... Oh, yeah. Ah, I love this music so much. I see, yeah. And then what? I mean, what about when you saw her in high school, though, you know? Okay. He certainly remembers it all now, huh? Ooh, right. Why? A math fairy. Right, uh-huh. I guess that's a math fairy. That's what Aragi was imagining. Interesting. Not looking for compensation. Okay. It's so picturesque. It's so, you know, yeah, so perfect. Hmm. But something has to happen. There has to be something unresolved here, right? Okay. Ooh. Never showed up again, I assume. Oh, another envelope. Yeah. Interesting. Oh, empty. I see. Does he feel like he failed somehow? That he did something wrong? Oh, doesn't even... I see. Okay. Oh, yeah. Interesting. Vanished completely, just like she did in high school yet again, right? Right. I mean, it would be impossible to truly forget, right? Hmm. He was changed forever in some way, right? Oh, yeah, yeah. I see. Enjoyment in numbers, huh? Ooh, right. Oh, that's such a... Yeah. Huh. The same... Hmm. I mean, in my mind, oh, the fabric of my personality. There's so many things. Ogie, what are you doing? I will talk about it in the discussion. Well, yeah, like obviously, right? I guess he has been pretending, saying she's the mystery girl or whatever. Sure, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, right. That kind of makes sense. Well, she wasn't here anymore either, right? So left her house, left her school. Those kind of go together. Right, yeah. Impossible to believe that, right? He's just pushing it down, you know? But why, though? Why would he want to? Because he views it as like a failure of his, I guess? Hmm. I guess. I suppose. But I don't think Oikura is just, there's some kind of reason behind it. She's not just being malicious or just like being jealous or something, right? Oh, yeah. I suppose in a way, right? Like it feels bad to have forgotten her. There's got to be more to it than this, though, right? There has to be. Okay, but I don't know if you understand what you're even apologizing for yet, right? Yeah, right? You have no idea what happened at all. Hmm. Interesting. Why did she not want to, right? It's like she gathered this festering hatred for him for some reason while they were separated. Right. Yeah. Surely this is how it should have went down, huh? Right. Exactly. Exactly. No, come on. The Hachikuji. Not really. She beats him up. It's right. Yeah. What actually like happened to make this go down like this? Sure, sure. The victim. Talking about victims again. Yeah. What makes her a victim, though? I suppose, right? But I don't know. There can be a victim even if you didn't think you were doing anything. Always the fool. She doesn't know anything. Yeah. I see, I see. The passage of time? What are the metronomes meant to represent? Right? Oh, here's the riddle. Here's the riddle. Okay. Didn't live up to her expectations. I guess that is what Aragi would think, right? Sure, sure. His parents' occupation is relevant. Interesting. 120 seconds. See how all the metronomes are like slowly syncing up? Yeah, right? Because that's how it works. Metronomes, if you put them all in with the same thing, they're slowly sync up. Hmm. Oh, okay. Even though she said she didn't. I see. But what? Teaching you math is fun or whatever. She doesn't respect math. Come on. Yeah, it must represent something for sure, right? Yeah, it must have only sent them to Aragi if he was the target, Yeah. Target sounds like a rough way to put it, but okay. Sure, true, true. Hmm. Sure. I don't think he's your uncle, but but sure, yeah. Did he say that? Okay. I guess. Oh yeah, she did ask about it, right? Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's what I was saying, right? That the house was already like all. He kept saying it was like desolate and all of this stuff. Yeah, right. So what was her living situation like? I guess, right? Yeah, 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 yeah. Makes sense. So then he wanted his parents, who were cops, to help with her situation at home. Okay. Whatever that means exactly. I see. I don't know. I feel like Ogi doesn't want to just lead him directly to the answer. Wants him to do it. Sure, sure. Interesting. Mistaken. Wrong. Not right. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Oh, that's such a sad. She tried to. The only connection, I guess. Hmm. Trying to reach out to Aragi is like a proxy, I guess, right? But that's. Oh, yeah. Hmm. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, right. But he was repressing it intentionally, I assume. Or maybe not even intentionally, like subconsciously, I don't know. Yeah, just somehow. Just like it's like Hanakawa, right? That's what it makes me think of. Well, parents are cops, right? Sure. I mean, it's definitely a long shot, right? Like why try and do this through Araragi? And she didn't ask for help either, right? I see. Oh, and yet he was too what, naive, I guess. Yeah, sure. She wanted Araragi to be the one to do it. She didn't want to have to blame herself for it. Yeah, yeah. Oh, and yet he didn't. Yeah, didn't live up to her expectations. Hmm. Oh, this actually feels so important, I think. Oh, a metaphor of me. Oh, God. Wow. Yeah, sure. So obviously, she remembered when they reached high school. And he was just like, what, just ignoring her from her point of view? Right, sure. Hard to think you deserve it, right? Yeah. Hmm. Oh, yeah, right? Exactly. Oh. Hmm. I just don't know if that's what we need, you know? Interesting. Okay. Okay. Huh. Oh. Oh, telling Hanakawa about Ogi. I see. Oh, God. I gotta think so much. I suppose. Without her, yeah. Very interesting. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, right. How did she figure that out? How did she know anything about you, right? Yeah, sure, right. Because it was such a big deal. Yeah. God, Hadaka was smart, huh? He would have thought. Hmm. Unnecessary problems, huh? I see. Maybe, right? Like maybe. Another thing, there's yet another, more in his past involving her, huh? There must be. There must be. Yeah, yeah. Oh God, there's another thing, huh? There's yet even more. Oh, an endless fool, huh? Right, right. Yeah, yeah, of course. Ooh. It's like he has been stuck in her mind for so long, and he's had the gall to forget about her, you know? Oh, I see. We're doing Schrodinger's cat, huh? Oh, God, okay. There's even more. What do you mean? Oh, God. Oh, no. Okay. All right. Oh, I am gonna really have to think about this episode before I talk about it. I don't know. Hmm. Hmm. I feel like all of this stuff about Oikura and Araragi forgetting it. Araragi feeling like he didn't live up to her expectations, that he didn't do um all of these things that she would have wanted him to do for all of this, right? I feel like it's like huge. It feels almost like an explanation for why Araragi is the way he is in so many ways, right? Like his attitude about like helping other people and stuff. Um like all of that could have come from this, you know what I mean? Like the feeling of like having failed Orkura and that he didn't do what he needed to do for her, right? And wanting to like avoid that feeling again in the future. God. Okay, okay. Uh let's talk about the episode in the discussion. Okay, let's talk about the episode. I did my best to like try and I think about it, but I just feel like, as always, the easiest way is to just try and like I work through my thoughts as we go, I guess, right? So all of this feels like, I guess this is the context in which this arc was even set up. All of this feels like it's so important to like why Araragi is the way he is today, right? Like so much, right? Um, God, like the number one thing I'm thinking about after all of this, right? This whole situation with Oikura having wanted to um like get his parents that have Araragi tell his parents about her situation and all of this in order to like get her out of this whatever horrible domestic violence situation that she's in. All of this, right? Uh One, there's the question of whether it's true or not, and that is what Oikura really wanted. It makes sense to me, right? It makes sense to me if it is true, but it also does feel like the kind of thing that someone like Araragi would come to this conclusion after the fact, trying to figure out like what happened. It feels like it's complicated enough of an answer to what Oikura wanted, what she was doing here, that I can imagine it just being something that Araragi himself arrived upon, right? But I could also imagine it being true. And either way, the important thing is just how Araragi feels about it, I guess, right? Feels about the fact that, as he said in this episode, he didn't live up to Sodachi's expectations, right? That he just like he was saying in the beginning here, how important it is for him, yeah, being right, being on the right side of history is on the line, right? He has to be right. He has to do the correct thing. He has to live up to these expectations that all of these people have for him, that everything has for him, right? That is his whole idea of justice and being correct and all of that, right? And with Sodachi, with Oikura, he feels like he failed, right? He feels like this whole, helping her with her parents, he didn't do it, right? This really sad moment with the letter, where he's like the letter represented me being like a being yeah, it was a metaphor of me, empty, wrong door, right? This is the kind of thing that I think would get under Aragi's skin and like especially the way he is now, would bother him literally forever, right? Like, think about, like, Kizu, right? How obviously the decision he made at the end of Kizu is something that tormented him for so long, right? Like if you think about the way he was like in Nekokuro or even like in Bake, right? It just feels like he was so actively tormented by it, you know. He's that kind of person. And I guess who isn't really, right? Who isn't the kind of person who agonizes at least some about mistakes they think they made in the past, about things like that. Just for Aragi, it's such a big deal. It's all tied up in all of these things that a lot of things that Ogi's kind of representative of in my mind, right? Like this idea of justice and being right, being on the right path, the right side of history, as he phrased it. So I guess all of that is to say that I feel like so if Aragi's conclusion from all of this, right? He had all this stuff with Orkura happen in middle school. He never saw her again after this. I imagine he ruminated a lot over it, that over the years, just over the months, I guess, following. I could imagine him having come to this conclusion by himself, right? Like again, I guess it's hard to say because Araragi, he has this whole memory thing where it's like he purposefully represses things that he doesn't want to think about, things that are uncomfortable and difficult for him to think about, and recognize he does his best to not think about them, right? To not look at them, not think about them, not, kiss shot with the vampire stuff and Kizu, right? Her eating people. He didn't think about it. He didn't think about it at all. He didn't think about how that's what it would mean to save her as a vampire, right? Um, the other stuff with Sodachi in the classroom. This more stuff now with Sodachi, right? Uh, and whether he does it subconsciously or not, I'm not sure. But the fact, for one, that this is Ogi who's explaining all of this stuff to him, telling him all this stuff about how, like, oh, this is what must have happened, and to me, Ogi being a part of Araragi in some way, means to me that, yeah, Araragi himself, I assume, either reached this conclusion actively or, like, subconsciously in some way he like figured all of this out about Oikura, that these were her intentions. So then what did that lead him to? That made him think, oh, I failed to live up to her expectations. I didn't do the right thing. I wasn't on the side of justice, She wanted all of this stuff from me. And not only did she want all of this stuff from me, she didn't even tell me, right? It's like there were these she set up these untold expectations for Araragi, that Araragi feels like he should have and had to have lived up to, and then he didn't, right? Whether or not it's like fair from Oikura, like I don't know, right? According to Ogi, which I'm inclined to believe her, is an abused child who's getting I can't blame her at all, of course, right, for the way the situation ended up. Um, but it's just from Aragi's perspective, yeah, he then thinks, "Oh, I failed this person that I cared about, that I had this connection to, the math fairy." Right? He failed to live up to these expectations that she had for him, and because of that, everything was terrible, right? She disappeared forever. She hates him now in high school, right? Like, if this was something that unconsciously he figured out, think about then how he feels when he sees Oikura again in high school, whether or not he, like, actually recognized her or not, or it was just something he was, like, repressing like he likes to do. Again, it's it's so hard to know, I don't know. Um, how do you think he felt about it then, right? Like, just even worse, right? That it's like these any kind of mistake like this, if you don't live up to these kind of expectations that other people have for you, even untold ones, right? Ones that you need to recognize for yourself, uh then it will lead to these horrible lasting consequences, and someone will hate you forever, and this connection with the person you had will be ruined. And it's, all of this terrible, awful, like these spiraling thoughts you can imagine so easily that Aragi would go down about what all this means, right? So I guess my point in all of this is I feel like all of this stuff with Sodachi and all of this stuff that happened here is like it feels like such an explanation for why Aragi is the way he is in terms of like helping other people. He I feel like he just wants so badly for something like this to never happen again, right? He wants so badly, like in Bake, or I mean, even since then, right? Just every connection he's made with anyone in the entire story, it feels like there's always this undercurrent he has, this idea that there's something like transactional about it, some kind of idea of compensation or something behind it. That word compensation comes up a lot in this episode. Ogi telling him that Oikura expected some kind of compensation from him, even though she denied it, right? I think Aragi views or has viewed, at least in the past, he's changing as a person as the story goes on, so it's hard to say, but he's viewed all of his relationships through that lens, I think, right? Again, the easiest one to go back to, I think, is just Senjugahara, how he felt like them starting to date in the first place was all based on this premise that he did something for her, and that she was almost just like paying him back for it, right? That's why he like basically didn't want to do it in the first place, right? And that was never really like dealt with. I don't know how much Aragi has like worked through those feelings up till now. It seems silly to say, but like I just think that's the kind of person Aragi is, right? Even despite how much Senjugahara and Aragi have gone through. I don't know if that's something that I don't know, I just feel like that's a lasting insecurity he would have. And same with basically every relationship with, like, every single character. Kanbaru, I mean, his one with Kanbaru is also very obvious in my mind. There's the whole connection between Kanbaru and Senjugahara and how Aragi felt about that in Tsuruga Monkey, right? Um, yeah, no, right? So I think it all comes back to this idea that he has that everyone in his life, he has to constantly live up to these expectations that maybe not even that they have for him, but that like the universe has for him in terms of their relationship, in terms of this idea of compensation, all of this. Because he wants so badly for something like what happened to Oikura to never happen again, right? That's why he feels like he has to help everyone. That's why he always has to, he has to be the he has to if he has to help everyone as much as he can, right? That's why I feel like that's why he's so self-sacrificial even. Obviously that's tied to like his self-esteem and everything back in Bake and stuff, of course, obviously, but I think so much of it just comes down to this idea, the spiraling thoughts that I imagine he must have had after everything that happened with Oikura. That so badly. It's like he wants to look for things that he needs to do for other people, right? He wants to look for some excuse that he can find to like help other people and have something he can do for them and view their relationship in that way where he has something, where it's like this like transactional compensation idea, right? That's again, like that's why Hachikuji was so special, because I think Hachikuji was someone that he couldn't twist their relationship in that weird way, right? Like Hanakawa being in love with him, for example, right? Like, is that something, that's something he never really got closure for, right? He wasn't there when all the tiger stuff happened, right? He doesn't really know, like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he really knows how Hanakawa, all he knows is Hanakawa confessed to him and he turned her down. And then what? Just I don't know. How did Aragi take all of that? That's just what it makes me think about all of these relationships and everything. Is that he's always viewing it in this lens of, if I'm not doing enough for this person, if I'm not living up to these expectations that even these untold expectations that I imagine they have for me, then they could just disappear and it's all over, and I'm not on the right side of history. I'm not on the side of justice and everything, right? And he desperately wants to look for what some kind of untold thing he could be doing for another person. Every person in his life could be. Because, like what happened with Orkura, he doesn't want it to, like, slip him by, right? Like, his worst nightmare would be a situation where he should have helped someone and he doesn't, right? And he lets it pass him by. He doesn't do it. That's why, like, with Nadeko, it got to him so badly, right? Uh like, his attitude in Nautico Medusa towards her, when he was like, oh, he blames himself. He says he should have noticed. He should have known what was going on with her. He should have done something to be able to help her. All of this. Um, and he didn't, right? And he blames himself for that, just like just it's like the same conclusion that he had here after all this stuff with Oikura. And that's interesting because Nadeko, her entire thing about Nadeko, like back in Nadeko Snake and Bake, was all about her hiding it. It was all about her covering up her pain and not showing it to anyone. And no one being able to help her because of that, really, right? Unless it's someone like Aragi who forces themselves into it. But even then, in Nautica Medusa, yeah, Aragi blames himself for it. It wasn't his fault, but no one really was able to help her there, right? Huh. So that, I mean, that's a good counter to, obviously, like, I don't think Aragi's mentality is good. That obviously goes without saying, right? Like, I just completely understand how he reached this conclusion, though. It feels so, and I guess I understand why it makes more and more sense to me as time goes on in these episodes why we haven't heard of Sodachi until now, right? Like, of course these are things that Aragi, like, pushed down and didn't want to talk about, didn't want to think about, right? Why? Just like how he's been saying how he forgot about Oikura and didn't want to think about her, didn't recognize her in high school, all of this, right? I mean, same for us, right? We skipped right past her, right? We have no idea. I think that's very funny in Kiyomi Monogatari when she shows up in that one, like, scene where they're flashing through everyone in, like, the last episode, right? Um and I know that only happened because of, like, airing order stuff, right? Kiyomi Monogatari was after this in airing order, but novel order, it was back then. But I also think it's funny because it just shows that, like, yeah, Oikura was something that would have flashed through Aragi's mind, would have been someone he would have thought of, but he hadn't shown her to us yet. Right? He had, right. It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. Um, Okay. Does all of that make sense about, like, how meaningful all of this feels for me in terms of Aragi's attitude towards, like, all of his relationships and everyone in life? I hope so, right? I'm trying to think of other cases of where Aragi has, like, had or could have had this idea that he needs to do something for someone. Oh no, Kabuki! Wait, Kabuki Monogatari, right? Remember in Kabuki when Aragi? I remember talking about this back then. Um, the entire premise of Kabuki Monogatari was ridiculous, right? It was Araragi got this insane idea that Hajikuji would be happier off dead and not existing, and he didn't even talk to her about it, right? And my reasoning back then, I guess, is similar to what I'm going to say now, which is just he because his relationship with Hajikuji was one that he couldn't think of some way to, like, twist and turn into something, like, crazy, right? To think of some way in which their relationship is, like, transactional or relies on some kind of faulty premise or something, right? It's like he invented that reason in his mind, right? He invented this idea in his head that, like, oh, I've actually this entire time been ignoring the fact that obviously Hajikuji would be happier if she was dead and didn't exist, right? So I gotta go fix that now. I gotta go back in time and do all this crazy shit to make that happen, right? Um, that's so much like this, isn't it? That's so much like this, right? Like how Araragi back here with Oikura, he did that, right? There's this problem that Oikura had that she actually wanted him to help with, and from his perspective, he failed, right? He overlooked it. He didn't realize that this person he cared about, this person he had a relationship with, had something that they wanted so badly from him, had these expectations for him. And because he failed to even realize that that was a problem that he needed to address, or that she wanted him to address, he let it pass by him, and he failed, and their relationship broke up forever, and it was over, right? Those are the same feelings he was having about Hajikuchi back in Kabuki. Right? Like literally like the exact same thing, you know? That's totally like where that tendency comes from for him, right? It all goes back to this Oikura stuff, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Are there any other arcs I can think of something like that happening with him? God, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of buried in a way in the faulty like way he views his relationship with everyone, kind of, right? Like his idea behind his relationship with everyone, you know? Like Kanbaru, like what's interesting about Kanbaru is I imagine that the entire time since Surga Monkey, he's had the idea in his head that like yeah, continuing to date Shinjuku and Kanbaru not dating her is causing her like this lasting pain still. Um does he do anything to like try and make up for that, to try and make that easier for her? Well, Shinjuku won't really let him. You know, the only answer he could come up with in Bake was to kill himself. And Shinjuku won't let that happen, right? So I feel like that's definitely a lingering thing in his head about Converu, for example. And what's interesting about that one is it's kind of true, right? Because of Hana. In Hana, we see how it's such a sad, just like lonely, depressing arc for Kanbaru. How we see how she's just stewed on these feelings for Shinjuku for all of this time, and how it's and all of this, right? I guess like the difference there is that was something that was never Aragi's responsibility, right? But I guess that's the point, right? Is even things that aren't his responsibility at all, kind of like this Oikura situation. I don't know if it's fair for him to blame himself, you know? Like he was just a kid, right? And all of this, right? I understand why he does blame himself, but still, kind of just like that. Like, yeah, Converu's the situation with that, it wasn't his fault, but that doesn't mean he doesn't blame himself, right? Just like he does with Orgura, you know. God, any other characters? Like, man, I don't know, right? God, okay. This is a very big revelation to me about in terms of like Araragi as a character and like what it is. I guess as they said in this arc, what it is that makes him him, right? What it is that makes him who he is today. Ah, man. Now, my other interesting thought on that. Okay, are we ever going to actually start going through the episode? I don't know. I at this rate we won't, but we'll see. My other interesting thought on that, which just I don't really know what to make of it exactly, but I just think it's something interesting to think about. Is the idea that like is it ever true that there is like one specific person or one specific relationship you have with another that actually makes you like who you are? You know, there's a lot of stuff that makes Aragi who he is today, right? There are a lot of things that do. And I feel like him having this idea that it is like you can trace it all back to Oikura, I mean, like I've been doing this entire discussion even, um, that is very related to me, to Aragi's idea about like the future and the idea that he can like take the wrong turn in life and that will permanently have him, you know, down in the path of being incorrect forever and it's over, right? Like that's very much an Aragi thing to think, right? It's like the tree with all the branching paths, right? How Aragi's a tree and all of that, right? Um it's the idea of the branching paths of life that he could take a wrong turn and then it's just over and all of that. That's what this whole idea reminds me of. The idea that one person being part of your life is like this turning point that set you on this path that you've been helpless to change, and now you're just the reason why Aragi is the way he is now is entirely ties back to this and all of that, right? It feels like it's all tied up in this idea of like, I guess not fate, but it's this idea of almost like predeterminism based off a previous decision he made that like and we know how Aragi feels about that, feels about making like the wrong choices and everything. Um it's this idea, I guess, like what Oiker was saying about how he doesn't know what it is that makes him who he is. Well, it's a lot more than just Oikera, right? Like she obviously what she's referring to is how much of an impact she had on him. Like when she said that he has a girlfriend thanks to math, right? Uh, I guess I can understand that, right? Assuming she knows the only reason he got into Naoetsu High is because, yeah, she helped him study math, improved his math grade, all of this, right? Sure, but there's been so many other innumerable things in Aragi's life that have formed him and made him who he is today. There's this big ball of experiences he's had, right? There's no way to trace it back to one thing, which I think is both the fault in Aragi's way of viewing life as like a set of branching paths, because the reality of life, yeah, there's important decisions you make that set you on like specific paths, sure, but really you're making millions of decisions constantly all the time, nonstop, that all have some kind of big cumulative effect on like where your life is going and what you're doing, right? And it's like Aragi's focus on that idea of specific decisions being the things that set you down these long paths in your life. The one of them's right and one of them's wrong. I think that's what causes this crazy anxiety and like worry in him about the choices he's making and the path he's on in life. When I just don't think it's like that. The same way I don't think that Oikera can say that she's so fundamental to who Araragi is now and what it is that makes him who he is, but like there's a lot more. There's a lot more than just that. He has so many people in his life. He shouldn't let this regret over Oikera like destroy him. He shouldn't let this be something that, yeah, there's so much more. There's so much more than just the decision. I mean, it's just like how Aragi always thinks. He's so much more focused on the mistakes he's made in the past and what he could be doing wrong in life rather than what's going right in life. What could possibly, what things in his life he's actually happy about and what decisions that he's made that he thinks are correct. Because it's almost like in his mind, if he's not 100% correct, if it's not somehow everything he ever does is right and he's on the right path completely, then he's on the wrong path and it's all over, right? And he failed and it's done for. He has to somehow fix every mistake. I mean, I guess that's another thing that Ogi represents, huh? That desire for every single little tiny mistake and every decision that you could possibly make always has to line up with this system of right and wrong and justice that Ogi represents, right? That she has to hunt down every little tiny thing and fix them all, right? Because that's what Aragi thinks he needs to do. That's how Aragi thinks he needs to live his life, right? Yeah. God. Okay. We gotta start talking about the episode. We've been rambling on the same frame for 22 minutes. Like Jesus Christ, man. Okay. Um. God, I swear to God, there's gonna be a lot more I want to talk about in this episode, huh? The usage of metronomes in this episode are interesting. I don't really know what to think about them. It makes you think about the passage of time. It's also like a very like ordered, structured thing, right? Like a metronome always, it's always the same. You just put it on a setting, and it's the point, right? It plays the same sound, sure. Which kind of makes me think of like, I guess the way Aragi views the world, like it's very like ordered, structured, right and wrong idea, right? Um, Makes you think of the passage of time because we certainly are back in time. There's the moments where like there's all the metronomes on the walls and they're ticking back and forth and they slowly like sync up with each other, right? Because that's how metronomes work. If you put a bunch of metronomes on like a desk or something and they're completely just off and they're all different, they slowly over time will start like ticking in sync with each other because like the tiny vibrations and like the desk will affect them enough as time goes on to make them all like sync up, right? Which is really cool, and that's a very cool effect, right? What does that mean, right? I guess you could. I mean, you could take it as a pretty simple visual metaphor for like Araragi like reaching the conclusion that Ogi wanted him to reach. I guess like in that moment, his mind like slowly being coming together and realizing everything, right? I guess it makes me think about like conformity, like group conformity, and the kind of stuff that we were talking about in Ogi formula, right? Which for one is kind of something that Aragi himself doesn't really think about. It's interesting how Araragi puts so much stock in other people's decisions. I guess because Aragi is so critical of himself and his own choices and his own decisions that he makes, and he puts so much weight in every choice he makes, and he doesn't allow himself like any kind of excuses, basically, right? And I guess he's like the same for other people, because something that is interesting about that whole dynamic with Oikura in the classroom in the last arc is like group dynamics and like social pressure, peer pressure is very much at play in that case. You know what I mean? Like people raising their hand for Sodachi, like I bet a couple people raised their hand and then a bunch of people did because like that's kind of that's how it works, right? Um, it's interesting that Aragi doesn't think of it like that. That he never, that's something that really wasn't brought up at all. But I feel like it had to be something at play in a way, right? I don't know. Maybe all that really says is just the way Aragi views like his own actions and the way he's so critical of himself and his choices. He thinks people are truly completely in charge of their own path in life, right? Like again, like what he said to Karen and Karen B about like not letting other people's opinions sway you. All of this, right? He imagines himself to somehow be on a path decided by himself. So therefore, I guess he imagines other people's choices and decisions are something that they purely make of their own will and are not influenced by those around them in some sense, you know? I guess that, I mean, that's probably part of why what happened in the classroom affected him so much as well, because it's like he wasn't thinking of it like that. He thought that was representative somehow of all of these people's like moral system and stance on justice and all of this. They were all somehow so fundamentally like wrong and like broken. Yeah, I guess that makes sense to me. Why do the metronomes make me think of that? Is that what they're meant to imply in any way? Like, no, but sure. This made me think of the egg, the little egg things that Karen and Skihi have on. I don't know. I guess Aragi's is green, huh? I guess when you're in middle school in the Aragi family, you get an egg accessory, and that's like the family tradition. What sort of person was Aragi Kiyomi back then in his first year of middle school? He was honest, genuine, and motivated. For all intents and purposes, he was a normal child. If we were to seek something uncommon in one so common, interesting, it would be that his parents were policemen and his personality was heavily influenced by justice, peace, and security. Right, right. God, I mean, it's interesting. It's like all the pieces are coming together about all of these things that just like anyone else, anyone in real life, right? All of these things that make up like who you are, the values that you hold, and the way you live your life. All of these things, right? Um, and it's very interesting getting all of that for Araki because, again, he's someone who, just like he said to Karen and Karen B, imagines himself to be like not letting the people around him influence him. That he somehow reached all of these conclusions and he is the way he is now purely from his own like mind, from his own desires and what he wants and who he wants to be. But that's impossible. No one can live like that. Kind of feels like that just right? Yeah, yeah. And I guess it's almost like if Aragi's being faced with that idea in this arc, right? If the idea that Aragi's being faced with in this arc is that he was never like that, and he was never truly just himself or whatever, right? I'm worried about the conclusion that Aragi's gonna take from that. Right? Like what is Aragi gonna think then? You know? I don't know. I don't know what his conclusion will be, I suppose. Aragi can be described as a boy with an unusually strong sense of justice. 5 years ago, when the first term was ending, he grew a little restless. So that's what I was thinking about. So I guess this wasn't his last year in middle school. This is just his first one. But I still think that just like how this whole story, all of Monogatari, being set on the precipice of our graduating high school and having to move on to the next phase in his life and all of this, right? And that being like, that's why it's so that's why the story is happening now, right? Is Aragi's anxiety over all of that and like what that means to step into the next phase of his life, right? Uh, it must have been like that for him in middle school too, right? Like maybe from middle school to high school, it's not as big of a thing. You're still a child. You still get to apply that label to yourself of like, oh, I'm a kid. I have this very structured system of I go to school and that's my life and all of this, right? And once you're into the real world, once you're done with all of that, once you're an adult, you have endless options. There's endless paths your life could take, right? It's like if you imagine like little baby Aragi back here in middle school, viewing his paths for high school, it's like maybe there's a couple, right? Maybe he sees in front of him, he's standing on this path. He sees a branch in the road. He sees a couple choices he can take, right? Sure. One of them he thinks is still right, which is like going to a good high school, going to Naoetsu High, I suppose. Um, But like for Aragi now, reaching the end of high school, think about the crossroads of what you're gonna do with the rest of your life after high school, right? Like if Aragi was growing restless because of this, then yeah, I mean, I guess we know how he feels now about his life now that he's nearing the end of high school, right? Man, not just a little, actually, it was a lot. He had just gotten back grades on his finals and was disappointed in the results. I see, I see. Especially in mathematics. He couldn't accept it. Being on the right side of history was on the line. Yeah, yeah. Not being right in his studies was a source of embarrassment greater than the bad grade for not being right in his studies. That's such a way to think about it, you know. But that is like socially enforced, like for sure, right? The idea that you have to, that you got to go to college, you got to, you got to get into a good high school, you got to do really good in all your studies and all of this. And yeah, I mean, it's something important, right? Of course, it's socially enforced for understandable reasons, obviously, right? Uh, it's just interesting how for Aragi that's something that he then equates to this idea of justice, to this idea of right and wrong, that it's like that it would be wrong of him to not succeed in that way, you know? Yeah, because I think a lot of people do view it like that, you know. That's kind of the that's like the stress that comes with it, I guess. It's kind of, I guess, like the downside of that kind of thing. Like obviously, like yeah, education is important. Just if it creates that kind of feeling, that's kind of scary. If I ever have kids, which I don't think I will, I would not want I don't know. I wouldn't want to distill that kind of feeling in them, personally, right? I don't think it's Aragi's family's fault. It's kind of like society at large. You know, a lot of people, especially in Japan, right? Japan's really, compared to like the United States where I live, I think education in high school is a much more serious thing, right? Back then, I didn't know anything about the Monty Hall problem, but suddenly being confronted with it piqued my curiosity. So I showed up at this building, which it was desolate and run down even back then. For one, it doesn't really look like that in his flashbacks, right? I wonder if that's also just part of him. Well, I guess it does, right? There's like cracks and stuff on the walls, right? But we have like this nice heavenly glow to everything and all of this. It makes me think like Aragi is like repressing all of that. He, as he actively doesn't want to think about it, right? Sure, sure. Um, so Dachi, her whole situation with this whole like domestic abuse thing, um, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I just want to say this because I think it's something important. Is the idea that Ogi gave him this explanation, and Ogi is part of him, right? If Ogi reached this explanation, then I think Araragi himself kind of did in some sense, whether it's subconsciously from some kind of the same depths of his minds that Ogi sprung out from, right? Something like that, right? I think this is the conclusion that Araragi himself reached after like ruminating over all of this. It's the same conclusion that he's repressed for so long, is that this is what Orkura wanted from him. Um, and I guess the question is it actually true? Uh, it probably is, because I can't think of another reason why Orkura would have this attitude towards him, why she would hate him so much, which we'll talk about that more later, Orkura's attitude towards him. But I guess that's just something important to think about how it doesn't even necessarily have to be true, right? What Orkura wanted here, and whether or not this is just something that Aragi thought of after, like, thinking about why their relationship went wrong, and he wanted some kind of answer for it, you know? Either way, all that really matters is how Aragi thinks about it, right? How he feels about the situation, right? That's what shapes his behavior, you know? What it reminds me of automatically too is like Hanakawa, right? This whole, just like how with Hanakawa, he was unable to help her with her family situation, right? Like remember in Nekokuro, like when he went to Hanakawa's house and he saw that she didn't have a bedroom and he freaked out so much, right? He went crazy, you know? Because for Aragi is such a nice family, right? Aragi is such a nice, he is such a perfect like life in that sense in terms of his family. He doesn't have to worry about these kinds of things that Hanakawa and Sodachi have to worry about, you know. That's kind of played into the whole envy thing for Hanakawa and Tsubasa Tiger, right? Um so it's interesting now that for both of these characters, he's had this struggle where it's something he can't help them with, right? Like for Oikura, I guess he could have, maybe, he could have told his parents and something could have happened, I guess, right? But he didn't, and he failed. And it's interesting with Hanakawa, it's something that he is unable to help her with, right? That she doesn't, she rejects help, and she, all of that, right? It's just interesting that that's happened twice. It's interesting that's happened twice because Araragi himself has this conflict about like the fact that his family is so happy and I guess like normal, I guess you could say, compared to like Hanakawa's family, compared to like Oikura's, right? I don't know. I wonder if he feels like some kind of insecurity about that, I guess, right? I guess it's just something it's, anything that he's not able to help someone he cares about with. Like, yeah, again, it's like well, it just makes me think during the Hanakawa situation, was this something he was thinking about? Right? This whole situation with Oikura? Is that why he wanted to be able to help her so badly? And why he was so like God, it's like his whole everything that he said to Hanakawa at the end of Nekomonogatari Kuro when he said like the whole idea that it's impossible to change and that no matter what, you will be the same forever and you can't do anything about it. Is that just like was he thinking of all of this back then about how with Oikura there was nothing he could do to help her, or at least he failed to help her, right? And then it's just he wants to equate that to this idea that with Hanakawa too, like oh nothing's gonna change. This is how it will be forever, right? Like because it's easier to think of it in that way than think of it as being like a failure for him, right? Which either way, I don't agree. This is the line of thought. I don't think he should think of himself like that or think of the situation like that, but yeah, I don't know, because I that's another connection, right, between Orkra and this situation and a character that he has a relationship with now, right? Hmm. Must have solved the puzzle in the letter then. Right, right. Changed my selection, but I don't know why C is correct. So I guess to talk about Orkra's plan, right? I'm calling it a plan even. It's just I guess it's just it has to be like this very desperate attempt to get some kind of help. And what Ogi says is so true and it's so sad. The idea that she doesn't actually just want to turn her parents in. She doesn't want to like call the cops or something and have them come rescue her, right? Like because that's such a hard thing to do. Because sadly, unfortunately, even people who are abused by their parents, they still probably feel some kind of connection to them, right? It's like impossible. At the very least, you feel the lack of the connection that you know should be there, and that in and of itself is like meaningful, right? Um, so yeah, it's like she wanted Araragi to be the one to do it. Basically, she imagined that he was this connection to his cop parents and that he would tell them and then they would do something about it, right? It's this very desperate, like sad attempt to fix her situation without actually like I guess without doing it herself. That's kind of the sad thing is unfortunately as much as I hate saying this line in a situation like this for an abused child, the idea of having to save yourself, I guess, right? Is it's like she tried something, right? I guess she tried something, but I don't know. It's really sad. It's just really sad. I don't know if it's fair of her. I don't think it's fair of her to think that Araragi. Uh, I don't know if it's fair of her to expect this of Araragi, right? To expect that he would know what she wanted and then do it for her. Um, Whether or not it's fair, I guess, doesn't change her feelings, of course. I can understand her having those feelings, right? Uh, Especially, like, later on. I bet she just has this festering hatred. The festering hatred for him that has welled up within her with all of these years. It makes a lot of sense to me. I can totally understand that. How she views Aragi as, like, this, someone who like, I bet just the same way Araki has ruminated over the situation for so long, I bet she thinks that Araki is someone who, like, must have known what she wanted back then and just didn't help her. And he's so, or even if he didn't, then that's even worse than all the stuff she said about how he doesn't even, he never gives thanks for what people do for him. And he never, that his ignorance of it might be even worse than him intentionally not helping her out of malice or something, right? Yeah, no. I bet she has ruminated and thought about Aragi so much, right? Especially because it's happened like several times too, right? Like he always, from her perspective, like got the better of her. He didn't help her back then in the classroom. She was the one voted out. The look of disgust on her face. I bet this is part of what was running through her mind, right? That somehow Aragi's always fine and she isn't, It makes sense, I think, like her level of malice towards him, thinking that, he's the one who gets called Euler and not her, right? She's the one who taught him math, and now he's doing better at math than her, right? Like, God. Because I wonder what her situation was like after high school. I mean, after middle school, right? Was she still just in a horrible domestic abuse, terrible situation in high school too? Oh God. I feel so bad for her. Oh man. Let's study. Let's hone our intelligence. Okay, I guess it's definitely all still run down and like ruined and destroyed, right? There's just shit all over the place, but it really is. It's like this heavenly glow and lighting on the scenes and stuff that I feel like kind of makes you like overlook it, you know? Because it's like, I guess we're really seeing it through Aragi's eyes, the way he viewed it is like probably this very heavenly, just, you know. Because I guess one thing that's sad about it too is it feels like Aragi wanted this connection with Orkura so badly, right? He really liked her, right? He really enjoyed, he loved these math sessions with her. He loved this connection to her. And the fact that he liked it so much and then he lost it because of all the stuff we've been talking about, him thinking that he overlooked this obvious thing he should have been doing for her. Like, yeah, that's why I think like with Hajikuji or with people who are the closer someone is with him, the more and more I imagine he wants to think of some reason, something that he's overlooking, something he has to do for them, some kind of compensation he has to give them for what they're doing, you know. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. And here's Ogi. She said she gave me the same letters to a few others. I like Ogi's smile here because I assume again Ogi just like has Aragi's memories, right? I assume, right? I think so. That would make sense to me, right? Like I I don't know. That would make sense to me. I just think that makes sense if Ogi just knows what Araki knows, right? Because that's what she always says, right? I don't know anything. You know everything, right? Because I feel like, well, yeah, she has the same knowledge as him. She's reaching these conclusions, right? So Araki should be able to reach them as well, right? So I assume, she's just laughing at him, being like, "Oh, you're so stupid," pretending to not know, right? She said she gave the same letters to a few others, but I was the only one who came to this rundown house to meet her. Quite the plan she came up with, huh? Just a sad, desperate attempt to reach out without actually trying to indict your parents yourself, I guess, you know? Ah, without even knowing what you were getting into. That's very, very interesting. You could even say I staggered in, huh, without knowing what you were getting into. I guess what that makes me think of is like the idea of like him not considering the choice and the decision he was making as deeply as he should, right? Because it's kind of Ogi's whole thing, right? Is having Aragi. She wants Aragi to be on that side of justice and all of that, right? Wants him to be on the right path, in the right path, right? Um, so I guess that's kind of in the same vein as him like not considering his decisions and everything, right? I guess you could say a lot of choices he's made over the past year have been things he staggered into, right? Things that kind of happened to him rather than choices he made, I guess, right? Or maybe things he didn't think enough about, I suppose. That summer is what likely prevented me from being bad at math or hating it. Noetsu High School probably wouldn't have accepted me. Very interesting because after Oki Formula, or after what the stuff we saw in Oki Formula, after his first year in high school, the classroom scene with Sodachi getting voted for and everything, right, and her leaving, he says he never scored good in math again, right? And it's like obviously, like, that's another thing that to me makes it so clear that he knew, even other than just that there was this connection between like Orkra and math, right? He was thinking about this, right? He had to have been thinking about this in some way, even if he wants to say he forgot about all of it, you know. So we gotta tell Ogi all about it, right? And again, it's like I feel like Aragi telling Ogi these stories, I really view it in the lens of him running it all through like this like critical lens of it's like he's being judged. It's like he's judging himself, I guess, right? Judging his own actions, thinking about all of this, considering, the path that set him down and everything, right? All the stuff that Ogi represents, you know? Yeah, because again, it's like oddities. Ogi just being a part of him. It has to be some part of like his mentality and his brain in some way, right? So she tells him about the Monty Hall problem. I guess there's a bunch of them. Probably right. The Monty Hall is just famous. Aragi-kun, I really hope you'll fall in love with math and that you won't stop loving it. I will love it. And yet I don't know. He says he didn't, right? But again, it's like I feel like at the end of Oki Formula, I feel like he did, right? That felt like the conclusion to me. What he said at the end about never scoring good in math ever again, right? Maybe he didn't stop loving it, but he felt like he didn't deserve it. He didn't deserve math anymore, maybe, right? Because math is something that is definitely so closely related to Aragi's whole thing about like right and wrong, like the rules of life and everything, because that's how math works, right? It's almost like a description of those things. Hmm. From the end of the first term to the end of the summer holidays, I kept coming to this desolate house. I kept studying with the mystery girl. The way he keeps saying she's the mystery girl, right? Like, this is what I mean. There's literally no way right now Aragi is thinking that that wasn't Oikura, right? I guess he's just a masterclass at fooling himself, huh? I guess that's what Ogi is, right? He is fooling himself. Sure, I guess, right? She was also the one who taught me about Euler's identity, the most beautiful expression in human history. Right, right. Even after all these years, I can recall a lot of formulas that are useless in school off the top of my head. Yeah, she had this long-lasting, fundamental impact on him, on making him who he is in a lot of ways, right? So it was more likely I went to this room to hang out. Yeah, to also just have a connection with someone, to have a real, genuine connection with someone, right? Like, God in hell, probably losing Oikara, losing this connection with her that was so meaningful to him. Because, like he said in Ogi Formula, he was already had no friends in the first year of high school. I wonder if that caused all of that too, right? If losing this connection to Oikara and feeling how much that hurt, if that's part of what drove him away from forming connections with anyone in school from that point on. Hmm. A cram school, right, right. Only meet him here, yeah. It's a condition she had. So there's three conditions. Oh no, how many? Yeah, right. The second condition was that I would keep our study session a secret, and the third condition, don't ask me my name, don't probe into my life, ask me only about math. That's so interesting, right? And this is what I mean, where it's in terms of like, there's no reason Aragi should blame himself for this, and I don't think Orkura should blame him either, right? Obviously, again, it's like, sure, that's just not how like feelings work, right? Um, I don't know. I wonder why Oikura had to do it like this, right? Like, well, no, I guess we know why. It just had to be. It's just her feelings about her parents. She didn't want to be the one to do it, right? I get it. I get it. Sounds like a math fairy indeed, and this is what a math fairy is. Taharagi, huh? Oikura with Euler's. I mean, sorry. Uh, Ononoki with Euler's identity written on her cheek. I guess. I guess that's a math fairy, huh? She does kind of look like a magical girl, doesn't she? With like her very colorful like outfit and stuff. I see it. I get it. I get it. However, those three were the only things she demanded nothing else of him, right? So those are the only demands in their relationship. So now, as we know about Aragi now, he always looks for like these unsaid demands, these unsaid things that are expected of him in relationships and stuff, right? Yeah, yeah. I felt bad just being taught all the time and giving nothing back, so I brought candy one day. Not what she wanted. Not what she wanted, right? Not the kind of compensation she wanted. Not at all. Oh, man. Accepted all the conditions and came here every day. Right, right. But one day it was suddenly over. It was on the last day of the summer holidays. Normally she would have already been there preparing our study session, but she wasn't there that day. So he really came here every single day over that summer. Every day he went and hung out with her, huh? Ah, what a sad, yeah, what a sad scene. Did not appear. There's a envelope under the desk, an empty envelope, huh? I wonder, like, is that what that was supposed to mean? Because that's such a sad, like, man. I guess at least that's the answer that Aragi took from it, right? Is that he failed, that he wasn't, he wasn't on the right side of history. He wasn't enacting the justice that someone else expected of him. Yeah, yeah. Never learn math from her ever again. Couldn't find out who she was because she was gone. Yeah, she moved both houses and middle schools. For the first time, he was afraid of her. That's why he didn't go back to that ruin of house. Yeah, afraid of the feelings that the thought of her vanishing along with every trace for existence. And it's interesting, right? Because like obviously what he's feeling is the pain of this relationship he had with her ending, right? He liked it a lot. He enjoyed having this connection with her. So it's interesting that he equates that to being afraid of her, right? Because I guess he's afraid of those feelings he has, right? Those feelings that he's feeling in this moment are like not good, right? It's just interesting that for him, then that leads to a connection of like fear of like her herself, fear of connection. I guess it makes sense, right? That's why he forgot her. However, he never forgot the math she taught him. Yeah, like forgot her just for, I guess, as a coping mechanism, really, right? To not feel that pain, I suppose, right? That's what he does. That's what he does. Not the traffic lights again. Oh god, traffic light. Like this image right here represents Monogatari perfectly, doesn't it? This is what Monogatari is right here, right? We got all the branching paths down here, all the green arrows, right? We got the red light. This is like how Aragi views like the system of right and wrong and everything, right? These are the branching paths of life and everything, all the decisions you can make. This is Monogatari distilled into an image right here. We did it. Roll credits. We're done. We figured it out. Aragi's grades recovered, with math as the core. And starting in the second term, Aragi's grade. Yeah, I just read that. While his daily life merely returned to the way it was before he went to that derelict house. God, like all these times we get these uh shots of traffic lights and stuff. I always imagine there has to be some kind of meaning, like deeper, like metaphorical meaning behind like what is actively being said, and like the lights changing from red to green. But that's a rough one. That is a rough one, huh? I don't know. I don't know. While one less discerning might think nothing changed at all, oh no, he was very much changed. Yeah, he was changed about everything. I think it fundamentally changed the way he viewed like human relationships, right? Like, yeah. If this had never happened, he surely would have had nothing left in his heart. After the class meeting that destroyed his sense of justice. So he even has that to thank for Oikura, right? Or from Oikura, which is crazy, right? Which is crazy. Um, God. No wonder she has this such disgust for him. Not that I'm saying she's right to feel it. I just understand it, I guess. She taught him that numbers were fun. She taught him that life was fun. She taught him that the world was fun. It's what makes me who I am now. That summer is the fabric of my personality. God, right, I guess. And I understand him thinking of it like that, but I also just know that there's a lot more to him than just that. And I don't think it's the way you should think about it. I don't think it's good, probably, to tie it all to this one specific thing. Because there is a lot more than that, right? Because it would be so easy for Aragi to take so much of what Oikura said to heart, which I don't really think he should exactly, right? I don't really think Oikura's being fair to him. Because like he could reach some bad conclusions from thinking of it like that, I think. Ogi's hypnotizing him, I guess. it was obviously Oikura, yeah, right? We don't really need any detective work this time. How do you explain that this girl, the young Oikura, wasn't in Nanahayaku Ichi middle school after summer ended? Well, she moved, right? She's gone. Seems pretty obvious, right? Like, these are all conclusions that Aragi could very easily reach, right? It's like he wanted some kind of excuse. He probably wanted some kind of excuse for it to not be Oikura. Like, yeah. I don't really think I believe him when he says he didn't recognize her. He just didn't want to face it. He didn't want to think about it. He didn't want to, you know. Yeah. She said, I have mathematics to thank for everything I am today, even that Sindra Gahara is my girlfriend. Perhaps she was trying to say that it was all thanks to her. Yeah. I love happy people, but I hate those that don't understand why they're happy. Right. So, God, we gotta talk about happiness. That's for sure, right? What was the other things? I hate the ones that don't know what makes them who they are. As we look at Ogi, huh? Ogi is a lot of what makes Aragi who he is, right? Like it or not. It'll always be a part of him in a sense. Now that you remember what you forgot, those words cut deep, don't they? Because what's interesting, right, is any potentially malicious intentions that Ogi has towards Aragi, like later on in the story, right, where like with the Tadatsuru stuff, trying to get him exterminated and all of this, right? I don't think it's because Ogi like hates him or something. Probably even calling it malicious is wrong, right? I don't think it is malicious. It's just she's just following the path of what's supposed to be right. She's doing what she's meant to do, I guess. Because what I was just thinking about is it's the same way where, like, when Aragi was suicidal in Kizu, right? You don't say that someone who's suicidal, like, hates themselves, or at least not necessarily, you know? Not in the same way, like, one person hates another, right? Self-hatred is a very different thing, right? So it's almost like any feelings that Ogi might have towards Aragi, because they're, like, the same, would almost be in that same vein of, like, self-hatred in a way, right? But it's not only that, because we know Aragi wants to say that he, like, loves himself, I think, right? That's himself is kind of the most important thing to him, or was for a long time. His whole, like, humanity thing, right? So, like, there's a line Ogi says later about, like, wanting to love him and all of this, right? Like, certainly, yeah, like, of course, that makes sense to me. I think Ogi would want that, absolutely. And I don't think her actions later on in the story, right, later on in the timeline, I guess, right? It was earlier in the story, later on in the timeline. I don't think that is, like, in contradiction to that, really, right? The same way Aragi, like, being suicidal early on, that doesn't mean he, like, hates himself, you know what I mean? Like, not in the same way that, like, Oikura hates him, for example. Like, self-hatred, I guess, sure, but that's a different thing, you know, than, like, Ogi hating Aragi and wanting to murder him, you know? Like, it's not like that, right? Yeah, yeah. Again, it's like, does that mean Ogi is leading him down the correct path? Like, not really, right? It's just, again, it's like, if Ogi just represents that system of right and wrong that Aragi has, again, just like anything else, sometimes that system that he has will be right, and sometimes it will be wrong, you know? Ogi just thinks the outcome is, like, besides the point, right? It's like we're more focused on the rules. We're more focused on what we know to be right, and then whether you're happy or not, whether or not that leads you to a good place, a place that you're happy with, is besides the point. It's about being right, you know, and that's where Ogi is leading him down. And sometimes those things will line up, right? Sometimes connections to other people and all of these things that Aragi himself would have thought were wrong in the past can bring you happiness and can make you happy, right? And sometimes they won't, but that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they're, like, right from our old Aragi's perspective and, like, Ogi's perspective. You know what I mean? I guess current Aragi, right? It's not like Aragi has changed exactly in terms of all of the stuff that Ogi represents. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. And I guess as I'm saying that, I mean, like, his connection with Oikura, for example, right? That was a connection with a person that certainly led him to having very negative feelings in the end because he lost it, right? Does that mean it was bad in the first place for him to have connected with Oikura and had this relationship with her? Like, no, not at all, right? Um, Certainly not. I don't think it's that easy, right? I think that's the flaw, I guess, with both Aragi's way of thinking about things and by extension Ogi's, you know. It's just it's impossible to define anything really as either being right or wrong. You know. Just sometimes what Ogi wants for Aragi will line up with things that make him happy and sometimes it won't. Like, I don't know, right? I don't know. Obviously, I think having him be exterminated by Tadachiro would not be good, though. So, right. But I guess I just have to assume the reason why her attitude towards him changes later, or at least assumedly, right, is just because he's changed more as a person between now and October and February and Ski when she hires Tadatsu to kill him, you know? I guess it's just because he's more of a vampire. He's more of a, he's more wrong then, I guess. I suppose. Surely we'll have, like, a real Ogi confrontation at some point, right? Anyway, I have to apologize to Orkra tomorrow. I doubt that it'll result in a sudden outburst of friendliness. Yeah, you really shouldn't apologize because you don't even know what you're apologizing for, right? You don't even know what to say. You don't know what you're doing. Yeah, you really shouldn't do that. Why didn't she tell me she's going to transfer schools? So Aragi just thinks this is all, like, that she's mad at him for not remembering her, and that's it, right? It's a lot. It's a lot more than that, huh? Hmm. And we get this really I love this so much. These, like, we have a little manga uh scene of how Aragi imagined his reuniting with Okura could have gone. Right, right. Surely it would be just like that. Not a single character in this work has been that magnanimous so far. I said Hajikuji, but I guess not. Hajikuji likes to beat up Araragi. Deserved. But anyone else? No, not really. I guess there really is no one that no one that magnanimous, huh? I suppose. I guess. Perhaps you should think hard about why she didn't tell you. Right, right. And think also about why she left without saying farewell. Otherwise, any apology tomorrow is likely to make it worse. Nothing infuriates the victim like half-baked apologies. We have not talked about victims for a while, and God, do I really want to dredge all that back up? All the talk about victims from from like the Nautico saga. I don't know. It's an interesting thing saying that she was a victim, right? Because I don't think I agree with that. I don't think Aragi victimized anyone. You know what I mean? So it's interesting that Ogi says that. I guess it isn't actively your fault. You're just a fool. And I guess there could be a victim in a way, even if there isn't really a perpetrator in that sense. You know? I suppose. I suppose. I know nothing. You know everything, Aragi-senpai. Absolutely, absolutely. And he stares at the metronome. I guess metronomes are also kind of in the same vein of, like, mathematics. This, like, consistent rule-following thing, right? That's, like, related to, like, his idea of right and wrong. Sure. Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. Let me follow little Orkura-senpai's example and be the quiz master. Orkura Sodachi hates Aragi Kiyomi as though he were her mortal enemy. It's because you didn't live up to her expectations. And that's what Ogi is here to fix, right? To fix Aragi not living up to, I don't know, the world's expectations. I guess Ogi's expectations, which Aragi thinks of as being the most important thing, right? Yeah. And okay, and then I guess to talk about the police thing for a second, somehow she knows, I mean, at the end, somehow she knows that Aragi's parents were cops, which, like, how? How does she know that? There's more? There's even more in their past, apparently. Like what? His parents arrested Okura one day when she was 8 years old. Like I don't know. Surely that's not it. And yeah, Ogi has to say it, huh? Or Ogi's just sitting here. He doesn't want to say it. He doesn't want to think about it, you know. And Ogi, just like an Ogi formula, I guess, is forcing him to confront it. I suppose, right? In return for teaching you that math is fun or whatever. You can't have this disrespect for math, Ogi. Come on. Hmm. But yeah, no, I mean it makes sense to me. Like this is a reasonable explanation to me. I can imagine it being just completely true, right? Yeah, yeah. Hmm. So when I showed up without knowing what I was getting into, you were walking right into a trap. You know that derelict cram school that my uncle Oshino Mime was lodging in rather well, right? Right, sure, sure. You also said this empty house and that ruin of a cram school are similarly run down. Yeah, so if she was living in this destroyed, awful house, then yeah, it's really, I don't know, what could her life have been like, huh? What was it like? But like that makes sense to me. I can imagine myself in Aragi's shoes thinking this is just some weird, like, I don't know, right? Thinking surely there's no way anyone can live here, right? That's probably what was going through Aragi's head, right? The same way that like being faced with Hanakawa's living situation was so unimaginable to him. Like yeah, yeah, it was just like that, right? Yeah, yeah. Curse Empire is waiting for you here because it was her home, and he can't even imagine it. Yeah. Hmm. Windows were already broken. Domestic violence, indeed. What a wretched childhood, huh? Oh, which is all gonna be like this is something I don't know. Aragi is not. It feels so unfair, doesn't it? I bet that's why Orkura feels like this, right? That Aragi's life is so happy and normal and all of this, right? Or well, Orkura's had to be like this, you know? So it's the kind of thing that Aragi, of course, will blame himself for and like feel awful about, you know? This also explains why she transferred schools when the second term began. Yeah. Her family fell apart and her surname changed. Okay, I guess. Yeah. So I hopefully she wasn't being horribly abused anymore by then, I guess. Ugh. Hmm. How's I going to do something about the violence and escalating discord of her family? By telling your parents, I guess. I don't know. What would he have said? Just said, like, yeah, I guess there's this girl who goes to my school who lives in a ruined house and there's terrible stuff happening, I guess, right? I guess. Arkura Senpai didn't want to indict her own family. Perhaps she was reluctant to accuse her own parents. Makes sense, yeah. Arkura hoped I would stand up and talk to my parents. And yet you didn't, yeah. God, that's so sad. The empty letter is a metaphor for him. God. If my memory serves me right, we started this investigation to establish why Okura Senpai hates Aragi Senpai. As if he were her mortal enemy. Indeed, indeed. We can regard the investigation as largely concluded now, I suppose, but there's more to it, right? It's interesting that there's apparently more to it that Ogi didn't delve into now, right? But I guess that's the point, is that she wouldn't, right? She wants Aragi to think about it and to reach all of these conclusions, right? Sure, sure. I'm really blessed right now. My life really is smooth sailing. I am happy. I have friends, a lover, people who rely on me. I'm very, very happy, but how do you feel about that happiness, right? That has to be such a weird thing to think of yourself as not deserving happiness, right? Can you even truly be happy if that's how you feel about it? If you feel like you can't, that you don't deserve it and that you shouldn't have it, right? I guess Oikar is so emblematic of that, Oikara's situation and everything. That's exactly probably what Aragi thinks of when he thinks about how happy he is. That's always this like lingering thing in the back of his mind that he shouldn't be, right? That he doesn't deserve it, Like if he thinks himself to be on the wrong path in life in some way still, right? And Ogi being representative of that, very much so. Then yeah, why is he happy, right? It has to create this crazy conflict in his mind, like because he can't accept that he was wrong, all that time before, And I don't think that's the correct answer either. I don't think you can just say that the way Aragi was before was just incorrect, right? The path he was on before was just wrong. But it's like, why is he happy now, Yeah. I started hating myself a little for my happiness, which is such an awful situation to be in because he was suicidal before when he wasn't happy, right? When he was on what he thought was the right path in life. In like the beginning of Kizu, right? Not connected to anyone. He thought he was purely human, purely himself, down living up to his idea of justice and everything in a way, he was suicidal. It was awful. It was terrible, and now that he's strayed so far from that path and he's become happy, he's found happiness, he's found what he didn't have back then. He's hating himself again, right? It's like yeah, and what does that mean then? I guess for one, it just means the problem is something deeper. It's not something that can be done away with, right? His way of viewing himself like this, feeling this unhappiness with himself and his circumstances. It's not something that will just go away by changing those things, right? It's something deeper about the way he views himself and the way he views, like, his self-worth and whether or not he's allowed to be happy and all of that, Yeah. I shall love you to even the score. I suppose, Ogi. But I don't know. Is that what we need, right? Is that what we need? Is that an answer? Is Ogi's love what we need, right? I guess my first question is, Ogi, can you love him if he's not doing the right thing, right? Because I feel like, I don't know, Ogi has to. It's just part of Ogi's nature. It feels like to correct the mistaken and punish liars and all of that, right? So she's certainly doing stuff with Araragi, right? Hmm. Very interesting. I don't know. It makes me think about what Ogi is, right? How does Ogi think about herself, right? Like, what kind of internal experience does Ogi have as an oddity, Like, yeah, she's made of all of these things, like part of Aragi's mind and stuff. That's like what formed her as an oddity, sure. That makes sense to me. But we know that oddities are more than that, right? Like, God, we've had this idea brought up several times in the story that oddities like can't change, right? And that they're these unchanging things that are so different from people and all of this, right? And I kind of feel like all of that is cope. I feel like all of that is Ononoki coded cope about the way that Ononoki just views herself. Ononoki always does those things, right? Where it feels like she thinks and talks about how she's just a doll who can't think or feel or change anything about herself and all of this. Immediately before expressing her own opinions and feelings and the clear fact that she is like a person, right? Even though she's an oddity, she's still a person in some way, right? And people have the capacity to change. So I kind of just reject the idea, right? Like Shinobu. Think about how much Shinobu has changed as a person since Kizu, right? Compared to the way she is now. I just reject the idea that oddities can't change entirely, right? Maybe some of them, right? Maybe that's inherent to some oddities, right? We've talked about the idea of immortality in some way being tied to the inability to change, right? Sure, But it's clear to me that characters like Ononoki and Shinobu and Hajikuji and probably Ogi, right, have their own internal worlds and are people and are therefore capable of change just like anyone else. So I believe that of Ogi too, right? What does that mean about Ogi? I don't think Ogi's evil. I don't think Ogi's malicious. I don't think, you know, I want a good ending for Ogi as well. So what will that be? What will that mean? I don't know. I don't know. If there's anything fundamental about Ogi that can't change, it's probably like what she represents as an oddity and all of that, right? Like sure, like that's kind of what the darkness exists for in a way. I still have questions about the darkness. I still kind of feel like the darkness is, in a sense, self-determined about the way you view yourself, but unclear, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know. I believe you, Ogi. I just don't know if you're right. Ogi can be wrong. Ogi wants to represent the correct path and everything, but I I think you're wrong a lot of the time, Ogi, unfortunately. Not wrong in like this fundamental objective sense that Aragi views everything, but just wrong in terms of your idea of all of that in the first place, right? Like what she represents in that way. Not wrong fundamentally, not wrong to exist, right? Just wrong in terms of the things that she thinks Aragi needs, right? That part of Aragi's mind of thinking that he has to be on the correct path in life. And that doesn't mean anything about Ogi herself somehow fundamentally being a bad existence, because again, that's almost like saying that Aragi, that part of Aragi, that version of Aragi that thought all of this in the first place is somehow wrong, which I don't like wrong fundamentally or something, right? Which I don't agree with that. I certainly don't think that's true. So, yeah, yeah. Aren't you glad you haven't started hating math? Whatever I hate, and despite losing my sense of what is right and just, I still love math. Interesting. Interesting. I think it's just he feels like he doesn't deserve it, and that's why his grades in math dropped, right? Hanakawa, I love you. Aragi tells Hanakawa about all this Ogi stuff, right? We know later in the future, in the timeline, Hanakawa's doing a whole bunch of Ogi investigation. She finds it very suspicious, right? Because of course, I mean, who wouldn't, right? Like it is crazy. To anyone other than Aragi, is immediately seems very strange, right? Like, yeah, yeah. All this hinges on the knowledge that your parents are policemen. Sure, sure. How did Oikura know that? Indeed. But apparently there's even more into the past that we need to delve into, assumedly, next time, right? How much of a fool is Aragi? An endless one, apparently. Right, right. No limit to his foolishness at all. She undoubtedly remembers. Remembers indeed. She remembers what happened 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and also what the fool did before that. We get some weird Schrodinger's cat thing here, which I don't even know what to think about this. Whether or not Oikura Sodachi was behind the door was entirely impossible to prove. Interesting. And I guess that's like the Monty Hall problem. I guess that's not really Schrodinger's cat exactly, but still, it's kind of is in my mind, right? Entirely impossible to prove. You don't know until you open it, basically, right? Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of how probability works. Sure, sure. Oh, God. Okay. God, and that just makes me think, like, her being behind the door or not. It also makes me think about, like, entirely impossible to prove in terms of, like, whether or not what Oikura's thoughts and feelings on all of this even are. Whether or not Aragi's right about what she wanted of him. Whether or not it's correct that Oikura, like, just everything about it. Whether or not it's correct that Oikura is like this fundamental beginning of everything for him, or so many questions about her, and all of these conclusions we're reaching about her that I guess we're just so unsure on still. So I don't know. Maybe we'll figure that out next time, huh? This was a long discussion, but that's okay. Uh, I suppose that's it. So if you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you think, and I will see you in the next one.